Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a wine that I think is actually from one of the estates in Bordeaux that offers superb value for money throughout its entire range and from vintage to vintage. The producer is Chateau de Chantegrive from the Grave, and this is their red from the 2021 vintage. Now they have quite a large range. They produce both reds and whites, and they have premium cuvées above the Chateau bottlings in both of those. Now the Grave region is possibly not as well known as it should be. It stretches away to the south of Bordeaux, south of the Garonne river. I suppose it's about the same size as the Medoc, going right the way down to Langon. You have the Sauternes and Podensac producing appellations are within this area as well. And here we're about halfway along the region in a place called Podensac, which is a small town with a very, very long history. The Roman settlement has been discovered in Podensac, and it's just on the river Garonne, opposite the appellation of Cadillac. The vineyards for Chateau de Chantegrive are about a kilometre away from the river. Now the estate was created in 1966, and what happened was that a couple of wine lovers, Henri and Francois Lévesque, decided to sell a stamp collection, a very valuable stamp collection, because they sold it and they bought 2 hectares of land. And with that they started the estate. Today it's a 96 hectare estate and is one of the largest in the Grave region. And the majority of its vines are enclosed by a single low wall. The soils here are quite impressive, large gravel, heavy gravel with river stones in, and within that there's a mixture of fine and coarser sand, and all this is over a subsoil of limestone and clays. And the vineyards here are on gently sloping south-facing hillsides. As I say, they produce both red and white here, and they produce about 2/3 red and 1/3 white. And plantings are about 50-50 Merlot and Cabernet, although they do have a tiny proportion, 3% of their red planting is Petit Verdot, and then for the whites again there's a 50-50 pretty much Semillon Sauvignon split, although that's interrupted by the fact there is 5% of Sauvignon Gris in there, but generally it's half and half for Cabernet and Merlot and Sauvignon and Semillon. The family have invested quite heavily to make this quite a serious estate. I mean, they built really quite spacious cellars. They've kept them up to date. In 2006 they employed Hubert de Bouard, the well-known oenologist, owner of Chateau Angelus, to consult making the wines. Unfortunately, Henri Lévesque died in 2009, and today his wife Francoise still owns it, but his daughter Marie-Hélène and her 4 siblings do most of the management of the property, I believe. There's a strong drive for sustainability throughout the estate. In 2017 they were certified as HEV3, so High Environmental Value 3, a sustainability certification. And alongside this they have wines that are named after birds, have their own area of nature reserve within the property. Average vine age is a very respectable 40 years, so giving wonderful concentrated fruit from those old vines. In 2021 the blend was 60% Merlot with 50% Cabernet Sauvignon. The fruit was entirely hand-picked. Fermentation goes on in thermoregulated stainless steel vats, but the fruit is allowed to macerate under cool conditions, so before fermentation actually starts, for 3 or 4 days, just to draw some aromas and plenty of colour out of the fruit before there's a presence of alcohol, which would sort of strip it rather more roughly. So there's quite gentle handling, but in all maceration lasts for about 3 or 4 weeks. The wine ages in oak. It'll age for 12 months in French oak. 50% of that is new, and those will be 225 litre barriques. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? First thing to say about it is that actually it's got quite a nice depth of colour. It's not opaque, but it's a deep dark ruby red with purple hints. And actually, yeah, as I said, not quite opaque, but not far off it. Swirling it, the wine has 13.5% alcohol. It's forming some very noticeable tears on the side of the glass there. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? They're quite classic, but they're not heavily showing oak. There's a lovely, slight high tone notes of red plum, a sort of bright red plum, and then there's a richer darker red, almost a black plum sort of note behind that, and you've got that sort of note of plum skin. There's almost a hint, just the slightest hint of leafiness, and leading into a little bit of perhaps cassis perfume at the end, but that's not really particularly standing out. It's just sitting in there with that sort of nice rich plum note. It's relatively intense. So let's have a taste, shall we? Tasting that, we've got a medium-bodied wine with some really mouth-watering acidity, actually. I can feel freshness just cutting through the saliva on my tongue. It's mouth-watering. There's a lovely fine structure. The structure's quite ripe. It's not particularly drying or astringent. There's just a little bit of sort of almost slightly peppery, woody bite there, a bit of structure. But mostly it's a sort of a more sort of velvety plum skin sort of note. Not quite grainy, but almost a slight sort of dustiness, cocoa powder sort of smoothness to the texture there. Wine's a midweight, it's not huge. And again, the acidity comes through at the end, and there's that sort of lovely, juicy, fresh, ripe red plum, some darker plum notes there. The alcohol's in balance. There's just the slightest hint of warmth at the end there. Oak is very, very well integrated. There may be hints of cedar, might be an underlying vanilla, but it's much more sort of touches of chocolatiness. None of these are particularly obvious. They're all beautifully integrated there. This is a nicely together wine. And I think we come back to the fact that the 2021 vintage may not be a great vintage, it may not be an excellent vintage, but it is actually quite a good vintage, suited for relatively early drinking, and actually very attractive. And really the only issue might be price. And actually I've always found that Chantegrive's wines are very competitively priced. So do have a look at the pricing in your market and see what you think, because I believe it's a wine that deserves a little bit more credit for the value for money that it can provide. So thank you so much for joining us. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. If you watch our videos regularly, it would be great if you felt like subscribing. Do please share the video with any friends you think might be interested. That would be fantastic. Any comments you have, please leave those in the box below. I will leave a link to the page for Chantegrive 2021 in the notes below there, and you'll be able to follow that through there, and you can see critic scores for the wine, you can see pricing, you can see availability, you can see the price history, and lots of background information with regard to the wine and how it's made. So do please think about following that. That would be hopefully very helpful for you. But thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope you'll come and watch another video with us some stage in the very near future. Thanks again. Bye for now.